Hello and welcome to the Farming Today podcast with me, Charlotte Smith. In this episode, the big egg debate, brown or white? But let's start with our theme for the week, the most staple of crops, cereals. Later this week, I'll be reporting from the big cereals show. It's aimed at arable farmers and covers everything, from trial plots of new crop varieties to big machinery and the latest tech. While I suspect that many of the conversations there will be dominated by the age-old topics of the weather and prices, tech in farming is advancing pretty fast, and many farmers hope it'll help even with the current challenges, as BBC Look East's Janine Machin reports from Northamptonshire.
Spring is here, and for agronomist and crop farmer Louise Penn, the focus is on the soil.
This is a crop of winter wheat it's milling wheat, so it's being grown for flour. But, as much as there's plenty of nutrients in the soil to be able to push yields and make sure that we have a big pile of wheat in the shed at the end of harvest, we do have to put extra nitrogen on.
The question all farmers wrestle with is how much. But here at Manor Farm on the Castle Ashby estate in Northamptonshire, Louise is trialling new technology which she hopes will help by analysing her crops from space.
So this is a hyperspectral satellite image of one of your fields. The areas in blue show those areas that have the most amount of nitrogen, whereas the red areas are highlighting those with the lowest nitrogen sufficiency.
Spencer Terry is from technology company Messium. In a barn stacked with hay bales, he's showing Louise an image of one of her fields.
So we saw satellites as a way of doing that, and not just satellites, but a type of satellite called hyperspectral, which is capable of detecting the actual nitrogen wavelengths from the crop, reflected from the crop's tissue, which means for the first time we can accurately measure the nitrogen in the crop in a similar way that you would do when taking a lab test.
It can also take costs into account to highlight whether an application is even worth it, particularly when the price of fertiliser is rising because of the war in Iran, but wheat prices are not. Louise, who is also in the process of lambing 2,000 ewes, is a big advocate of using new technology to transform farming. And while this one is still a trial, she is hoping it will help to keep a lid on costs, which she says could see some farmers stop growing.
It's not just fertiliser, it's the cost of the seed, it's the cost of the diesel in the tractors for drilling those crops, harvesting those crops. So if the margin's not there, then we won't be putting those crops in the ground. And I think anything that makes us more efficient, that is really great.
Louise Penn there in Northamptonshire. So with high prices for energy and fertiliser, but not for their crops, and after another dry spring, how are arable farmers in the UK doing? I spoke to Anthony Spate from the industry body, the Agriculture and Horticulture Development Board.
Over the last few years, farmers have definitely been presented with many challenges given the weather and also just stuff with geopolitics. To start with, we had the Russia-Ukraine, which has caused problems in the markets and obviously prices surging up and input costs going up. And even now we've got that all still continuing with the US-Iran conflict at the minute, which is really putting a surge in energy costs and input costs. And also they've got the weather to also battle with. Although it hasn't been as dry as last year, until recently crop development was very good. And then obviously we've had this dry spell, which has obviously impacted UK cereal crop conditions.
Farmers can't control the weather, they can't control geopolitics, they can't control the world price of wheat. What can they do? What can they control?
Really knowing their cost of production of their crop and being engaged with the forward market for cereals and oilseeds to ensure that they take advantage of these moments of spikes in prices, whether it's geopolitics or the drought in the US and we see a spike in the wheat price. You'll also see the futures and the forward price go up as well. So ensuring that although you can't control obviously the weather or the cost of these inputs, what you can do is control what your break-even point is for your crop.
There is some talk amongst farmers that actually looking into the future, they might not plant this autumn because they're pretty certain, given the situation, that it's going to be an expensive crop to grow and they won't make the money back on it. Do you expect that to happen once we get there?
What I find you might see going into 27 harvest is growers potentially cutting back on the amount of fertiliser that they will be applying to their crop. And obviously this is going to have implications for both production and quality. So we could see the composition of the UK crop change marginally for 27 harvest, but I personally can't see there being a significant drop to cereals and oilseeds area.
If that change happens as you describe, will consumers notice it at all?
Obviously, commodity prices increasing, they could feel that as a consumer, but also energy. And, AHDB has done analysis over the years on the price of grain and how it impacts a loaf of bread. And one of the major input costs to a loaf of bread is energy, and it isn't actually the raw commodity. So when you ask a consumer's going to feel this, yes, they could to some extent, but it really does depend on the price direction of commodity markets, and also what happens with the US-Iranian conflict and what happens with energy prices. I think that is going to be the main driver of what consumers feel when they go and purchase things and their groceries.
Anthony Spate from the AHDB. How do you like your eggs? Brown or white? Well, that's a question many have been pondering, as Sainsbury's has announced that it's switching to white eggs for environmental reasons. The supermarket says that their white eggs are laid by a different breed of hen, a white hen, which tends to have a longer laying life and produces the same amount of eggs on less feed, meaning, Sainsbury's says, a 12% reduction in carbon emissions compared with brown hens. Elwyn Griffiths is a poultry farmer in Shropshire. The family business now packs more than 1 billion eggs a year.
We've started introducing white birds a couple of years ago. At the moment, all our barn cage-free birds, we went white, mainly because it's a difference of systems, and the white birds are more robust, they're genetically different from the brown birds. The biggest challenge really is the public perception of a white egg over a brown. We're old enough that in the 70s we had all white birds. Supermarkets paid more for brown birds. So we changed to brown. We were most probably the last people to hang on to white birds. They gave you a premium for a brown bird, so farmers respond to money in cash, and everything went brown.
Do you think consumers at the moment prefer a brown egg because that's what we've been used to?
I think you have. If you go to America and you go to Asia, the eggs are all white. And the consumers have just been used to brown eggs. Yeah, it's just the perception, and white eggs look strange.
Sainsbury's say that they are better from a carbon emissions point of view in comparison with the brown. Would you agree with that?
My understanding is the best reason a white bird is more efficient is they will be more persistent, they can be kept in lay longer, they lay more eggs, and ultimately one chicken will have more output if it's white than brown, with the genetics that are available in the world today.
How much difference does it make the way that you keep them, the food that you give them, all of that?
If a chicken is active like a human being, if you're active and flying around, you burn energy with all the cage-free systems and the more activity in the modern higher welfare systems, the birds are more active, and the more active they are, the more energy they use for their activities rather than producing food.
Elwyn Griffiths in Shropshire. Ian Dunn is Professor of Avian Biology at the Royal Dick Vet School in Edinburgh.
In the case of white eggs, they're actually all lines of white leghorn chickens. White leghorns have a very long domestication history, arguably probably back to the Roman times or Mediterranean production. The brown breeds that we use, they're crossed to give whatever particular requirements there are for the market. So maybe slightly larger eggs or certain aspects that the farmer or the producer would buy.
Nutritionally then, are the eggs pretty much the same?
Yeah, I mean, the nutritional quality of an egg depends on what it's fed, not really genetics. That's by far the biggest important factor.
So Sainsbury's say that these white hens that they're using tend to have a longer laying life. Is that true when you have developed these different strains?
The truth is, the difference between how long the lines lay is not huge. And in fact, they can all lay for a long time. The breeding companies are all trying to make them lay profitably for longer, typically, say, 100 weeks. That's the aim. I mean, they can do it now. It just depends on how the farmer, and obviously all sorts of random things that can maybe throw a spanner in the works. But the key thing about white egg layers, so really the white leghorn line, I would argue is that they have been selected historically for much longer, so they're just more efficient. They lay more eggs over that period, not a vast number more, but it's all efficiency. And they convert food into eggs a bit more efficiently than the brown birds do.
So do white eggs then have fewer carbon emissions than brown ones?
They're definitely more efficient, and therefore, carbon or whatever metric you want to use is going to be less. Across the entire egg producing industry over the last 40 years, the reduction in the carbon footprint of any poultry production, but eggs, has come down a huge amount. And so, in fact, the difference between white and brown eggs probably quite small in that regard. I mean, what they've actually done is nothing short of amazing, really. Because it comes from an increased productivity, it's not something people always want to shout about. But the reality is they're more efficient, and their carbon footprint for the amount of eggs produced is easily 2/3 of what it was.
Professor Ian Dunn. And that's it from us. I'm Charlotte Smith. The producer is Beatrice Fenton, and Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.